Hi, this is Brian from Blend Marketing, and today I'm going to help you avoid some of the common problems that I see with clients' website analytics data. I want you to be able to trust your data and use it to make informed decisions. I'm focusing on tourism websites today, but much of what I'll talk about is really easily adapted to other sites as well. There are 4 ways that your website data can waste your time or your money or both. You can get bad conversion data if things aren't set up correctly, which will possibly mislead you, and it's something that you can't trust when you're trying to optimize your website. You can get fragmented data that costs you time and causes you to miss things. You can get completely missing data that can never be recovered and leaves some questions unanswered, or you can get junk traffic that just misleads you or gets in the way. I'm going to show you these problems, and I'm going to show you the solutions for all of them. So the first step is to make sure that you've set up cross-domain tracking. So this is a Google Analytics landing page report, much like what you'd see in your own account. One important thing that it tells us is how well each landing page is converting. This is important data for the health of this company, but unfortunately it's flat out wrong. So how does something like that happen? Well, in order to answer that, we have to start with a little Google Analytics 101, but don't worry, I promise it's going to be quick and painless. You need to understand 2 key terms, session and conversion rate. A session is a website visit. For any given session, Google Analytics can tell you a lot of information, like where that person came from, such as a Google search or a Facebook ad, what page they landed on, whether they booked with you, and so on. People can, of course, have multiple sessions. It's common for someone to first come in to your site through an ad and later come back from a search and maybe later come in direct. But today we're going to focus on a single session. The other thing that you need to know is conversion rate. So your e-commerce conversion rate tells you what % of sessions end up booking. It's a really simple calculation. The number of sessions with a transaction count is pretty close, divided by the total number of sessions. So it's typical in tourism for 2 to 3 out of 100 sessions to convert. In some segments of tourism, it's higher than that, but in average, about 2 to 3% convert. So problem number 1, now that we have the foundational kind of aspect of sessions and conversion rate, problem number 1 is Google Analytics losing track of someone, thinking that they actually came in through multiple sessions, and it ruins your conversion rate data. So here, Jennifer landed on the zip lines page from a Google ad. She ended up booking a tour, but the value wasn't assigned to Google Ads or the zipline page. Why? What happened? It's because the booking happened through the booking engine, which is technically a separate website. If Google Analytics isn't explicitly told that a session can span multiple sites, it's going to assume that these sessions are completely different people coming from different sources. So that means that 2 unrelated sessions were recorded and 1 transaction was recorded. So instead of a 100% conversion rate for Jessica's 1 session, we have a 50% conversion rate. And this conversion rate error impacts multiple reports. We already saw that Google Ads didn't get assigned credit for the transaction, but here's another problem. Google thinks that the session that converted started on, let's say, mybookingengine.com/booknow or something. So the zipline page looks like it's not converting. To see if you have this problem, you can look at a landing page report and look for the problem that we just saw, or you can go to your channel report and look for a high percentage of your transactions being assigned to your direct or referral channels like we see here. So how do you fix this? Let's get into the solution. There are a few steps that you need to take. You need to set up cross-domain tracking to help Google Analytics understand that this really is a single session. So the fix can range from easy to complex depending on your booking engine and how it's implemented. Some booking engines like Zola and I think Fair Harbor handle this automatically and they do it beautifully. Others require just a simple step. So start in your booking engine settings where they let you configure your Google Analytics settings and follow any steps related to cross-domain tracking. This is a screenshot from Checkfront where they tell you exactly what to do. There are some other steps you should take too, though. You should make sure that however you've enabled Google Analytics on your website, you've enabled linking between domains. This screenshot shows you how to do this if you're using Google Tag Manager, but if you're using a plugin in WordPress or some other solution, check the documentation for how to enable cross-domain tracking. In Google Tag Manager, you should also add the conversion linker tag that Google recommends and specify your booking engine as one of the domains to auto link. And lastly, you technically should add your booking engine domain to your referral exclusion list. This is done in Google Analytics property settings, and it takes just 30 seconds. It doesn't impact everybody, but it is something that you should just go ahead and do. All right, problem number 2. This next step, or I should say step number 2, this next step applies especially to companies that are doing content marketing, but it's really for anyone with very different segments on your site. For example, we have clients that host events, but also have outdoor aerial adventures. And things like conversion rate and revenue per user could be quite different between those two segments of users and segments of your site. But the obvious one is content marketing, so let's look at that one. When we ramped up blogging for one of our clients, we told them before we started, expect your conversion rate to drop when we do this. Now, why would we say that? It goes back to what we talked about earlier, the fact that conversion rate is a percent of the sessions that end up booking. Traffic to your blog post for, say, top things to see in Miami isn't going to convert as well as your page for Miami speedboat sightseeing tour. So that extra traffic that you're generating ends up lowering your conversion rate. You're bringing in top of funnel traffic, which is great, but it's a very different kind of traffic. And this is really significant for some clients because sometimes a piece of content or a lot of your content could end up driving more traffic than your homepage. So let's say that you're working on improving the conversion rate of your tour pages, but that month you launch some new articles or for whatever reason you get a lot of blog traffic. Your overall conversion rate on your site goes from 1.9% in the previous month to 1.8% this month. So on the surface, it looks like things got worse, but of course, I got some blog traffic. So did things get worse? How much did things improve if they did improve? Were your conversion rate efforts successful? The only way that you can know this is by excluding the sessions that started on your blog so that you're looking at conversion rate that's not impacted by your blog traffic. If you're lucky, you can just go to your landing page report and filter out the word blog, and you'll be able to see how your landing page is converted. You can even set up a custom segment in that case that excludes the sessions that started on your blog so that you can easily apply that segment to multiple reports. But what if your website doesn't use a different URL pattern for your blog posts? We see that quite often. In that case, things get a little bit more technical. You can try to figure out how to filter and separate things through filtering and through segmentation. But I'm going to tell you one of my favorite tricks. It is a little technical. I'll give you an overview, but I'll make it really quick. I like to set up a custom dimension in Google Analytics to help with this, and I call it initial intent. This lets me send information to Google Analytics about what the user came to the website to do. You can see here that I put people into 2 buckets, top of funnel research or find a tour. And because I've done that, I now have a separate conversion rate for those 2 different groups, as well as separate revenue and revenue per user. So the way I do this is I populate that custom dimension using Google Tag Manager and some light programming inside of Google Tag Manager. I'd love to dig into this further as far as exactly how we do this and how we cookie people and keep track of what was their initial intent that they came in for, but I have 3 other steps to share, so I'm going to leave those details for another time. Step number 3 is to tag your links correctly. Google Analytics understands some of the traffic that's coming to your site, such as search traffic or traffic from other websites, or your Google Ads traffic if you link your Google Ads account in. But it needs help with other traffic. So for example, if you don't tag your email newsletter links, Google Analytics categorizes that traffic as direct traffic, and you'll have no way of ever really knowing how much revenue came from your email campaigns. In this screenshot, it looks like email did nothing for this client. Email isn't the only place that you need to tag your links, though. You also need to tag your links in your non-Google ads. And tagging your links is really easy to do. Just go to Google and search for the term URL Builder, and you'll find a tool, multiple tools, that let you fill in your website address, like you see here in the top left, and your campaign source, your campaign medium, your campaign name, things like that. And then it's going to give you a tagged link. This link contains the information that Google Analytics needs in order to understand where that traffic came from. You should do this on non-Google ads and on your emails. And when you do, be sure to use a standard naming convention rather than just making up your own. The reason that's important is sometimes we see a situation like this on the top screenshot here, where Google didn't know which channel the traffic belonged to because someone didn't follow a standard naming convention. On the bottom screenshot here, you see how Google defines a few of their channels. For example, if you want your display traffic to show up, or your display ads to show up as display traffic in Google Analytics, the medium needs to be set to either display or CPM or banner. Now you can modify these definitions a little bit. That's another way to handle it. But typically I recommend using this naming convention that Google's already using to bucket that traffic in Google Analytics. Now, don't get too link happy though. Sometimes when clients understand, oh, I can do UTM tags, oh, I see how that's useful to Google Analytics, they get a little too link happy. There are some times that you should not tag links. For example, I don't really recommend tagging referrer links in every case. Let's say that you're listed on the website of your local visitors bureau or other local websites that are focused on the destination that you're in. You don't have to tag those links. Google Analytics already understands when a link came from another website other than a search engine or an ad platform. You can tag those links if you want to, but I typically recommend just keeping that traffic in the referral traffic report. There are things that you can do to add some extra information, like if there's a placement that you're testing out and you want to see which placement that traffic came from, you can do that. But do it in such a way that keeps the referral traffic coming in to one spot. Also, do not tag links on your own site. This is a big mistake since it ends up messing up your sessions. As we saw earlier, sessions are really at the core of Google's Universal Analytics product. So messing with a session wreaks havoc on your data. So if you want to know something like which buttons the users are clicking, you can use Google Analytics events. You can use a tool like Hotjar. You cannot tag these links. It will screw things up. Don't do it. Number 4, you can use filters to prevent fragmentation of your data. This is a time saver, but it also makes sure that you can understand your data quickly. There are 3 types of filters that we're going to look at: query string filters, social aggregation filters, and just turning on site search, which is a form of filtering itself. But before we do, there's a really important step that you need to take before I tell you to do anything with filters in Google Analytics. You really need an unfiltered view of your Google Analytics data that you never mess with. If you make any mistakes when you're setting up these filters, you can lose data that can never be recovered. So I want to make sure that that data is being sent to at least your unfiltered view so that it's always available in some way. Setting up an unfiltered view takes just a few seconds, but it's a really important safety measure, so take the time to do that. Okay, on to 3 of the problems and how to fix them. Problem number 1. You've probably looked in your pages report and seen something that looks like this. Because of this Facebook click ID query string parameter, it's not easy for me to see how many page views my homepage really got. I'd love for all of my homepage page views to show up as a single line item, but it can be fragmented into hundreds or thousands of lines because of these query string parameters. And there are several query string parameters like this, not just the FBCLID. We have our own extensive list that we use for our clients, and you can find the offenders, these query string parameters, by looking at your own pages report and figuring out which ones are getting in the way in your data. Once you have those, the solution is to filter out these query parameters. In your view settings in Google Analytics, all you need to do is enter each of those little parameters like FBCLID and in a comma separated list, and all that traffic is still going to be logged, but your data won't be splintered into 1,000 little fragments, your page data that is, because those things will be filtered out and Google will not be bringing those into your page report. The second problem is your social traffic being fragmented. This is a minor annoyance. Facebook, Instagram, Yelp, and other websites serve up traffic to you from different subdomains like m.facebook.com and l.facebook.com, as you can see here. So instead of one line showing me all of my Facebook referral traffic, I have 3 plus the ones that you don't even see on the screenshot. So what's the solution here? You can set up filters that aggregate this data. So in this case, I've set up a filter that aggregates, that takes in any Facebook referrer URLs and it replaces them with just the word Facebook, just for the source. It doesn't mess with the medium, so I'm not losing the data that I need. The only thing I'm really losing is knowing which subdomain on Facebook those links are coming from, and that's not important to me. So I set this up for Facebook, Instagram, Yelp, YouTube, channels like that, and just keeps my data a little cleaner. One last tip about fragmentation. This doesn't happen with everybody. If your site doesn't have site search, you can completely skip this one. But you can see here that there's a bunch of search page views that are using the query parameter of the letter S. And Google Analytics actually has a feature for this called site search tracking. It takes just a few seconds to set up, and then Google Analytics can present your search data in a cleaner way for you. So go ahead and turn that on if you do have site search. Lastly, we want to filter out 2 types of unwanted traffic: your own visits and spam traffic. So your own visits can be visits from your home or your office, for example. Filtering out your own traffic can be done by creating an IP address filter. It's not crucial in most cases, but it's easy to do and it helps keep things clean. If you find your to find your IP address, just Google "what is my IP," and Google will tell you, and then create a filter that looks like this and paste in your IP address. And then your traffic won't be showing up in your standard view anymore in Google Analytics. It'll still be in your unfiltered view. All right, for this last tip, I'm going to share a custom spam filter that I developed with my colleague Ben Page. If you spend time in your Google Analytics account, you may have occasionally come across some traffic spikes that you couldn't initially explain. If you drill down, you found that this was spam traffic with a referrer source of something like trafficbot.life. You can find some websites that keep an updated list of these traffic sources to block, or giving you kind of definitions for your filters. But as we dug in, we found that there was something in common with most or all of this traffic. The browser size was reported as not set. Browser size is something that Google Analytics will record. And then the page title was also reported as not set. So we figured that if we could find a way to filter out that traffic where both the browser size and the page title were not set, we would have a decent spam filter that didn't have to be actively maintained. But because of a limitation with the Google Analytics filters, we had to come up with this 3-step process. First, create a custom dimension in your Google Analytics property. Set it up just like you see here and call it browser size plus page title. I do a hit level scope on this. Secondly, you're going to create a filter in your view, again, primary view, never touch your unfiltered view, and create a filter that populates that field that you just created with the browser size and the page title. This screenshot shows you exactly how to do that. It doesn't take very long at all, just a few seconds. Now you're going to create another filter. Make sure that the next filter you create runs after the first one. And this time you're going to exclude any traffic where the new field that you just populated shows not set and not set together. This means that both the browser size and the page title were not set. With this filter in place, you should catch most of the spam that we've been seeing in recent years. Now, a couple of quick caveats though. While we did spend some time tracking this down and testing the solution, you should still apply it with caution. So remember to create that unfiltered view first, and think through whether there's any legitimate data coming into your website that might get caught by this filter. So let's recap. The 5 steps that you need to take so that you can trust your website data and efficiently work inside of Google Analytics. Number 1, set up cross-domain tracking, especially if you're using a booking engine that doesn't handle this automatically for you. Number 2, segment your sessions so that session types of different intent can be looked at differently. Number 3, use link tagging correctly, but not too much. Number 4, filter to prevent data fragmentation, especially of pages. And number 5, filter out any unwanted traffic. Hope this was helpful to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.